Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, the Comic Book Cast, and the Arun Mehta Show. Welcome to the final episode of Casual Chats for 2019, leading up to the new decade of 2020. I am Patricia, and I'm here with two very special guests discussing about the 1999 Canadian animated series Cybersix. I actually did a video of it a few months ago discussing about the series. So with me, I have the person who actually voiced as Cybersix herself, and you may know her for her other roles such as Near from Death Note or Spike from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. We have Cathy Weseluck. So welcome, Cathy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And we also have the voice of Julian, but you also may know him for his work on My Little Pony Friendship is Magic or Mega Man NT Warrior. So we have Andrew Francis. So welcome, Andrew.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
I'd like to know from the both of you. So how did you guys get called in for Cybersix?
It requires a lot of memory, doesn't it, Andrew?
I'm pulling everything I got.
Well, I mean, like any audition, we get called in, just as we would on any other show. And that was the case for this one, too. This one, even though it seems in some ways to people an anime kind of style, or looks in some ways anime, it actually is a prelay recording session. And so in that respect, we just at the time got our audition sides that would be sent to our agents. And then in those days, we would come in person and do that in the studio. And that's pretty much the process. And so that was the case. It's a bit different now, as Andrew can attest to.
Yeah. Well, now a lot of times they ask for MP3 auditions, which I'm not a huge fan of because I love going in the studio and getting a little bit of direction from the director and being sort of guided. But yeah, back in those days, we were in the booth. I really only had one role that I was sort of eligible for, as I was, I think, around maybe 10 or 11 or 12, somewhere in there, I think. So I actually just brought up the very first episode that I did, and I just had just such a high voice. It's awesome. But anyway, so I came in, and I think this is actually my first prelay that I ever did. I did a Monster Rancher show for a while, but I think this is the very first prelay that I did. So I was kind of thrown into the deep water with all the pros, and it was awesome.
Wow. So I'm actually curious, did any of you guys get to audition for any other characters besides the ones that you ended up being?
Yes, I mean, pretty much when we do get, at least in my case, when I get auditions, I will indeed try to audition for anything that I think is within my range. And in that case, I think that I would have auditioned as well for the character of Lori. This particular show was very, quote, real in its kind of performance. Mm-hmm. It's still a little bit put on. It's not completely real sounding, but even so, in that case, there would have been no option for me to say go for Andrew's character or another young boy voice because they wanted real actors, real voices for that.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of times in cartoons, you'll find, My Little Pony is a great example of that, is really talented voice actresses who are not the age of the characters that they're playing, and sometimes playing boys or sometimes playing girls. You find that a lot now, and that's because it's a lot easier to direct someone who has that experience. And also, I think hours come into play. That older voice actors can do longer hours. But yeah, I only went for that one role, as it was like Cathy was saying, wanting real voices, and really that's all I had in my repertoire at the time. But very soon, hearing all the different awesome voices around me, I started like a sponge sort of bringing everything they were doing in and just practicing at home and stuff. And then I'd bring it to the studio and try to do it for them. I'm like, oh, I could do my best, Michael Dobson, and try.
Hey, Andrew, did you audition for Jose?
Oh, actually, yeah, good call. No, that's right. I did audition for Jose. I can't remember the voice actor ended up getting it, but yeah, I didn't have the maniacal thing. I know. Oh, Alex Doddick. That was
Alex
it, right?
Doddick. Yeah, Doddick.
Oh,
yeah.
Look, memory is there. Yes.
Awesome.
He did such an amazing job with that character. But I remember, being like, oh, that's such a juicy character. But then after seeing what he did, it was they made the right decision who they cast.
Yeah, I think that the way that you guys were put into your roles, I think that it fit in just fine.
Definitely.
It was great. He did a great job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know that your memory might be a little bit fuzzy, but do you remember any like behind the scenes stories of when you would record for the lines of the episodes?
Cathy, why don't you start? Because you probably have a better recollection.
Sure. It was at Ocean Sound Studios, which we still work at today. And back in those days, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, we did have to go in for all of the auditions rather than putting them on MP3s at home. And I'm pretty sure at that time the digital audio machines were coming into play. So that was a new thing for us too. And I was kind of doing a stint as a casting director and director in those days as well. And I remember during that time, we would have casting sessions. And regularly, the digital audio machines would literally go down, and so we'd have actors waiting in the waiting rooms, the lounges, having to wait 10 minutes until the thing booted up again. So it was really quite clunky back in the day. So nowadays, it's just awesome. But as far as memories of anything outstanding, I think for me, it wasn't anything that was kind of like shocking or different or anything like that, except to say that it was really great for me because it was one of the few shows that had that featured a lead actor being a woman. And so that was really awesome. And it was very European looking, this particular show. Some new techniques were being developed at that point as far as coloration and techniques. And so Cybersix was a little bit cutting edge in that way. But technologically, yeah, we were just kind of starting to get into the digital era. It was quite funny.
Yeah, building off what you said, Cathy, I looked at, like I said, the episode that I was in. I don't remember where that fit into the season. But yeah, the animation is really, really beautiful, almost ahead of its time. And another thing you mentioned was at Ocean Studios is where we did the cartoon. And Cathy was saying, yeah, we still go to that studio today. Well, I literally was at that studio today and literally with the exact same director, Carl, who did, it was Carl, right?
Yeah, it was Carl.
Yeah. And so, I mean, with him again, I mean, he's such a staple of the building. I don't know what's going to happen if he ever retired. But it's just wild that, we're all still doing the thing, so many years later.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I do know that the animation studio behind Cybersix was also the same people who did shows like Batman the Animated Series and pretty much a lot of the superhero cartoons of the 90s. So they actually did have a lot of experience working on Cybersix and, getting the influences from the comics to put into, into animation, which they did do a brilliant job of. I mean, even still to this day, the animation is still praised because it looks so unique for its time, definitely going into more of a dark, edgy presentation compared to the light and colorful ones that were featured at the time. And you're absolutely right, Cathy, that, at a time in which when there weren't a lot of female superheroes, I mean, you had Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you had the Powerpuff Girls, but at the time you didn't really have like a lot of representation of, females going out and saving the day. Nowadays you do. It's very common now, but back then it was a rarity.
Absolutely. Rarity. Did you say rarity? You started. I'm just saying, right?
I didn't mean to say that joke.
We can't.
Good dog whistle.
We can't help it now, right? We just can't help it. So I know Francis, Andrew's going to be, he's going to be breaking into his.
Oh, sorry.
But what was interesting too, I wanted to just say about that is you mentioned the production people. Well, TMS was the company, and it was in collaboration with our Canadian company, NOAA, which was headed by Hervé Bédard at the time. And it really was amazing to have a collaboration of that caliber, I think. And so, yeah, when you mentioned the other shows too, it sort of was a blossoming and exploding of some new opportunities there, and for the big screen. So it was. I would personally, Andrew, would you like to see Cybersix on the big screen? I would.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
Definitely. I would love to see that.
Oh.
I mean, the animation would definitely hold up, and it's got that feel of a big sort of motion picture too, and just being a cartoon.
Yeah, I'm going to ask about that question a little later on in the show, but in the meanwhile, I know that it's probably been a while since you've seen any of the episodes, or maybe even remember some of the moments, but what would you say were your personal favorites in the series?
I know for myself, because Cybersix, I was the character Cybersix, and her whole struggle was her struggle between being part human and part cyber. And so there was a scene, and I don't remember exactly the episode, but I'm sure the fans and the viewers will remember. But it was when she pulls off her gloves and she's reflecting on how difficult it is, sort of going inward. It was an inward moment about the struggle between that and also her love for Lucas. And so I really liked that moment as well. And also just the fun moments with Jose, who, as we said before, did a great job. But I think that was it for me. I think it was when she was reflecting on the struggle between her humanness and her cyber side of things. That was a great moment.
Yeah, I can remember that moment as well. I think that was from one of the earlier episodes in which when Cybersix and Data 7 were sitting on top of the roof and she was looking at a display of a red dress and thinking about like her being, what would it be like if she was normal? And then you have that scene in which her and Lucas would be dancing. And this is kind of like that more vulnerable moment that you get to see from her.
I have to say as well, you mentioned Data 7. I think that was a really beautiful moment too, when the two of them met eye to eye when he was pouncing about to take her out, basically trying to attack her. I think that was a great moment too.
Yeah, especially when it's revealed that that was her brother.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this later as we go further into the show, but there's a story about, you mentioned how it's affected us in our lives. Remind me about that moment, because there's an interesting story behind it.
Oh, absolutely. Anything for you, Andrew? Maybe like, if you've ever seen like, the moments with Julian where he would go over to where he used to live and he had to like steal money so that he could live. I'm sure that those have been like really like tense moments to like work on and to, voice for.
Definitely. Yeah. That was definitely part of the fun of playing this character was, all the different sort of places that he got to go and the different things that he got to do. Yeah, I can't really remember them specifically, but I do remember, being in sessions and watching Cathy and Michael, like Cybersix and Lucas, sort of having their sort of talks and sort of seeing them infuse the acting into voice acting, I mean, we're all in one big room when we do prelay, and so we have the opportunity to play off the other actor. And it was the first time that I'd really seen acting that wasn't in front of a camera, and also just really having a front row seat for just a scene happening, so watching the direction come in and then make changes and evolve the scene to be, or each of the scenes that they did to be what they were. I just really enjoyed watching that process. And of course the other voice actors doing all their stuff. So that was my favorite part. It wasn't exactly moments in the cartoon because I can't necessarily recall, but just watching the acting happening and then sort of feeding off that and using what I learned and putting that forward. That was definitely my favorite part.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think some of my favorite Julian moments were when, he's trying his very best to help Cybersix out, even though he's very young. But he does have, his moments where, he's trying to fight off Jose when he's kidnapping Akiko so that Yashimoto can be able to locate Cybersix. Yeah. Then there was the episode in which when the police officers were brainwashed and Julian tricks one of the fixed ideas to like lift off the helmet by using Cat's Cradle.
And see, just I've seen the small bit that I saw, it gave me motivation to want to rewatch the show just because the animation is so good and the voice acting is so good and it just has such great stories. I'm like, I got to get into this. I got to watch this again.
It seems to be picking up on a new wave now too. Sure. And one thing I wanted to say, I do remember it's such a small and simple line, but it had a lot of response back then too. But is when Cybersix is in front of Julian in one of these scenes. And just has a moment with him and basically just says, a promise is a promise,
Right.
That was kind of a scene.
Yeah, nice moment.
Yeah, that was a nice moment, especially since, Julian didn't really trust anybody because he was an orphan, and Cybersix promises that she'll be on his side, and they basically become like really close friends throughout the course of the show.
Remember, and it's so funny because we got to be close friends, Cathy. Cathy would always drive me home. We lived about 45 minutes outside of the city. And so she had this brand new Audi, and I would get in there, and I remember everything was smooth. I remember I always say that. Do you remember that, Cathy?
He was what did you say, 11 years old, and he was fascinated by this car, and so was I. Actually, I'd never owned a car like that too, but anyway, and so he would pull when you get inside the car and you sit down with the little handles that pull out. He would just go, oh, look at that, oh yeah. Got to drive in. And I think his mother was really happy I took him in, so that's good.
She most definitely was. If she was here, she would be thanking you. So I'll pass it on from her.
And now he's shining armor with a beautiful, deep voice.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Well, right before I continue asking the questions, I just want to congratulate the both of you for your work on Friendship is Magic, and just the fact that it was on the air for 9 years, and the huge following that it gained from people from all over the world. So I'm sure that you guys are very happy with the work that you were able to do for it.
Yeah, that show, I don't even know what to say. It's a legacy. It's something that's impacted my heart for sure. It's really affected me deeply, and certainly everyone, all the actors I know, but the millions and millions of fans. So yeah, it's definitely something I'll take with me for sure. It's been a beautiful experience.
I echo that sentiment.
My next question is, who are your favorite characters besides the characters that you voiced in Cybersix?
Well, I love Julian, Andrew.
And I love Cybersix. Oh.
Outside of Julian.
Big push fest.
Yeah. Well, I really did like Jose's character. And I was
Jose too. Yeah,
because Alex did an awesome job. But let's not forget that Janice Jo was also in that show. And she had sort of cameo roles in that and played Laurie. So, but I think for me, I think it was Jose. I think he was just so colorful, and he just did such a great job. And he was so natural. He wasn't even really prompted that much in general to get the kind of energy and character that showed up on the screen. It was amazing.
It was, and I really liked and the animation of that character and the writing for that character was just a really, really cool character. You don't usually see, well, I mean, I guess you do see sort of younger, sort of maniacal type villains, but you'll see them in shows, let's say, like Johnny Test, where it's Bling Bling Boy, where it can be very cartoony. Yeah. To have Alex doing that, like very real, but then still maniacal, and with the animation that went with it, yeah, it was just like a sweet combo.
And those fixed ideas were, I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Yeah, they were
right, but powerful at least.
Yeah, exactly. And Terry as Dr. Von Richter was actually really good too.
Right, awesome. Yes, he did a great job.
Yeah,
it's nice to know that for the most part it was like a very small cast. I mean, it was just you, Michael, Andrew, Janice, Alex, and Terry, and some few actors in between those. But yeah, it was a small cast, but everybody was able to pull off each of the characters, and they were able to bring something interesting to the table.
That's so weird that you say that it was only that many people, because I remember there just being like crowds of people in that room. So it just shows how small I was when I was there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there would be like, very interstitial characters who would come on by to voice some. I know Brian Drummond, he did Yashimoto, and I do know a few of the other actors who voiced some of the secondary characters also did multiple characters as well. And I think that, it just shows to show you that there was a lot of talent put in for a small cast.
Well, there's a writer that Drummond has to be on every single show as something. He'll be the engineer if he has to. But, yeah. So I cut you off, Cathy.
He's always with us, But I think one thing that's interesting too that the fans may not be so aware of. At least it happens in many shows, but it really happened a lot in this one. As you say, we had a smaller cast. But if you listen to the children playing in the schoolyards in the background, you can hear hints of our voices. I mean, you won't necessarily recognize us as who we are, but we I don't know how many in a room at once there would be, but some of our just core cast would also play the laughter of the children in the schoolyard, and then they would double it up and double it up and double it up. And so that is all of us too.
Oh, wow.
Kathy, question. Because, okay, that's considered wallow. We don't do that anymore, right? That isn't the wallow that we usually do in the room now, like the falling or that kind of stuff. We don't do crowds and stuff anymore, do we?
No, we don't. But I think I'm not sure if Ocean still does this but what they have done is they have loop groups now. So there's oftentimes actors that are brought in now just to do that. So either and I mean, if it is for a show like Cybersix or a regular series that's going on, they oftentimes will have us do it to a point, and then they'll just use it over and over again in their like a log in a library. But I think groups come in. I do think there's loop groups that come in to do that. Yeah.
I remember that was always fun. I would never necessarily get asked too much because they'd want adults would be in a crowd. But I remember that was always so cool. And I was like, oh, I want to be part of like the triplets that do that, or the 3 people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do sound effects now and again. We actually do sound effects. And I remember for another show I was in called 16 Hudson, I played Shazamon in that. They hired me just to be a crow.
Oh, wow.
Let's see if I can
There you go. Nice.
Inner tone here.
Angry crow, Kathy. Angry crow.
Hey, listen,
Sad crow.
I played an oyster and a yam before too. So there you go.
Wow. What does that sound like?
Oh, gee, he talks like that, eh? That's a yam. Did you know that?
I mean, duh. What else would a yam talk like?
Oh, how silly of me.
Yeah, of course.
I know. Come on. Can you tell we have fun?
This is a small slice of what happens in the room, too. My goodness. Yeah.
So true.
I'm sure you probably know this, but Cybersix was originally based off of an Argentine comic book series by Carlos Meglia and Carlos Trillo. I was wondering if you actually got a chance to read the comics right before you would work on Cybersix, or like later on after you were done with the series that you got a chance to read it?
I guess it would have been during the actual recording of our show. I did take a peek at it. I won't say that I read it cover to cover, but I did take a look at it. It was really interesting to see it in comic book form. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting, yeah. And I could see how they borrowed from it. I think it was a little bit, what's the word? A little bit more intense.
Adult.
Yeah, a little bit more intense than what was translated in the series. But I took a peek at it, but no, I can't say I read it cover to cover.
I saw pictures, yeah.
I was doing a video on Cybersix for my channel, and the thing is that it was translated to Spanish, Italian, and French, but we never got an official English translation. And there have been a few people dedicated to like translating it into English. And the stuff that I've read, like the maybe first 20 or 30 chapters, wow, it is very intense. Like,
yeah.
Very intense. Like this is not for kids, by the way. I'll just let you know that. And
that's why I was kind of surprised that I was happy that they chose that particular comic, because they did a lot of what they derived from it. But yeah, if you get a little too deeply into it,
Yes, that is quite an understatement. But I'm actually curious, considering that nowadays with Cybersix and the fact that superheroes are a lot more popular with the cinematic universe and DC and Image Comics and all that stuff, would you like to see Cybersix come back as a new series or even a movie, to kind of like introduce people to who Cybersix was?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I was disappointed, like everybody else, that it was kind of left written as a continuating series and then didn't continue on. But I've heard so many people at that time and even to this day wishing that would continue. So I would love to see that. Yes.
Here.
And the great thing about it, maybe not so much our dear Andrew, but he certainly can do other voices.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of other characters that
in the air. It was the elephant in the room.
Hey, you're a good fixed idea. That's for sure.
there are plenty of other characters in the comics that we never got to see animated, and I think that he would do a fantastic job with some of the characters that would show up later. I think he would, I don't want to spoil anything. I think that, to get close, a character that's really close to Cybersix and Lucas, there's a character called Genghis that I think Andrew would be perfect for. I would love to see that, interaction between the two. I'm not going to say, who it is, for spoilers, but I think that with Andrew's performance, I think he would be phenomenal. And there's plenty of other characters that show up later that really ups the tension of what happens to Cybersix and Lucas, and Dr. Von Richter's plans become a lot more diabolical, and so does and we get to see more of Jose and the others. So I think
52 episodes will do just fine then.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And a
Sure.
movie.
And a movie.
Well, I know for a fact,
Movie.
I know at least myself and Mike Dobson, our voices are still where they were, at least still able even to do shampoo to this day, believe it or not.
Oh, nice.
From Ron Malone. But
Yes.
that would be great. I would love that.
Bring it back.
Bring it back.
Bring it back.
You hear that, everyone? Bring it back.
Get tweeting, get Instagramming, do the thing.
Absolutely.
So I know that Cybersix did win a few awards in various ceremonies, but why do you think, in your opinion, it only lasted for those 13 episodes? It didn't continue on?
That is the ultimate question, and it is to this day. We never really had any knowing or there was no illusion as to what was happening at that time. We just suddenly heard it wasn't continuing. So I'm honestly not certain on our end of it, but usually when these things tend to happen, sometimes it's a production issue, sometimes it's a budgetary issue. I really don't know, and it's really a shame. But they left a cliffhanger, so it's just, in my opinion, it's ready to go.
Absolutely.
In that sort of light, like, a lot of times now cartoons are coming back on Netflix like gangbusters, from a long time ago. There's a show that I did, I don't know, 6-7 years ago for many, many seasons, and I can't say which one, and it's coming back out of absolutely the blue, right? So there's no reason. This is a perfect candidate to be picked up either by Netflix or one of the other streaming services, or anyone, but especially them, and come back to life. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think now we can get into the story that you were alluding to earlier, Cathy. So when did you realize that Cybersix left an impact on people?
Well, back then I surely did, because I was hearing so many things about it from people. And also now I just hear this huge sort of rush of interest in it again. But back at the time, in the day, during that time, I got a phone call from the producer, who said that a family from Windsor, Ontario, Canada, wanted to talk to me. And I thought, what about? And so I spoke with, the producer, et cetera, and my agent. We were chatting about it. And it was a wonderful story. So what it was that a family had an autistic 10-year-old little girl. And she was severely autistic, wasn't able to speak a sentence. Once in a while, she'd say a few words, but instead of that, there was nothing else that she really could say. And so she would often, watch cartoons in front of the television and just really enjoy that. So this family had her watch Cybersix, and for some reason, she just became mesmerized by it. And I'm not sure the time frame after that began, but if I'm not mistaken, and I think I'm not, they said that she began to associate things that they were surprised had happened. So she made an association between the Panther, Data 7, and Cybersix. And before that was able to suddenly recite, I don't know if it was in the entirety of it, but the majority of Cybersix's lines verbatim.
Whoa.
Wow.
And then was able to not only do that, but was able to make the association between Data 7, which was her little brother that had died, and then the consciousness by the mad scientist was put into the Panther, and then sent to take out Cybersix. So she was known, Cybersix called Data 7 little brother in the show, and this little girl was so into it that she was able to make the association and ended up calling Cybersix big sister.
Wow.
And so this blew the family away, and they needed to contact me. And they had a professional, like I don't know, someone dealing with autistic children who was involved in it, and they were fascinated and they wanted to speak with me, and they were beside themselves because the little girl was literally able to speak. She was able to read these sentences and now put two and two together. So it was a really big deal at the time.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And you just don't know what it is or what combination of things connect with them. Like there's different things. I know a little bit about autism because I took a bachelor of music degree back in the day, and there was a music therapy course in our school. And they dealt quite a bit with autistic children and found that they resonated with rhythms. But this was my speech, potentially. So we're not really sure how that came to be, but it was beautiful. And I have a stuffed animal to this day that their family sent me for that. It was really touching. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I had seen less of that because I was so young when it was making an impact on people for the majority of its time. It's so sweet to see another wind now. But no, I didn't really get to see that as much.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. But now I'll keep my eyes open for it.
Yes, please. Anytime that you go to a convention, I'm sure that if you were to post up some pictures of Julian from Cybersix, I'm sure people will be very excited.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a good idea.
He was 11 years old. He was hanging out with his friends and,
Gosh, yeah. Getting ready for high school.
Right.
And being the star and all the other, for his age.
Well, I get to learn from the best. I mean, that was what was so great about being a part of the show, was being around Cathy and being around Michael and getting to just sponge from the best voice actors in the city. It was amazing.
Andrew was on fire then, and he's still on fire now.
Oh, every once in a while. Cathy, you are fire.
All right. So my final question for the both of you is, what does Cybersix mean to you?
Yeah, I'll start because I'll be brief, Cathy. Cybersix means a lot to me. When I look back on the time that I worked on Cybersix, it was me emerging into a new industry that I hadn't done before. It was being a part of a cartoon that had so much heart and so much realism that I got to watch great actors / voice actors bringing these characters to life. And now, 20 some odd years later,
it actually celebrated its 20th anniversary this September.
Oh, wow, that's wild.
Wow.
So I would have been, yeah, that's crazy. I just, having this interview and just being able to look back on this time and sort of reminisce on times that I wouldn't have thought of if it wasn't for this cartoon. It means a lot to me. I wish that I'm going to rewatch the entire cartoon and really get more of a grasp of what it is and what it's saying. But it really has a special place in my heart. There's no question.
That's great.
And I echo everything that he said with respect to the nostalgia of it. Every time we do a show that's a series, it leaves an impact on us, and we sort of build another acting family and production family. And I mean, we certainly do that over and over with other shows that we're in. But there was something special about Cybersix in that way. And again, it was one of the very few lead female roles at the time. And not only that, like I said, it was unusual and unique because at that time there were a few little cutting edge things that were happening, even in sound production, but digitally. And also, the look of it, as I said, was very European, and yet it sort of bridged the North American market as well. So there were those things, but just the heart. I think the fact that it had such great morals and values again in that show is something I always take notice of. And I think that had also an impact on people, just the messages. You can take them in so many ways.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to end things off. So once again, Cathy, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on by.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
So yeah, if you want to please plug and promote your stuff, where can people find you at?
I'm on Twitter, and so you can certainly find me there. I'm blabbing away most of the time. So
awesome.
And yeah, I would go there for most of my most recent tweets, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can catch me on Twitter or on Instagram. Instagram's Real Andrew Francis, and I think Twitter's Drew Francis 604. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then. Well, thank you so much for listening, everyone. Let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on Cybersix. Who were your favorite characters? What was your favorite episode? What was your favorite moment? And would you like to see Cybersix come back? Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you around soon. Happy New Year. I'm going to post this on New Year's Eve, so Happy New Year to you guys, and you have a happy holidays.
Oh, great. Hey,
Happy New Year. Woo, New Year's.
And take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.